What's up, guys, and welcome back to Beyond the Void Horror Podcast. My name is Alex, and today we're going to be doing a spoiler-free review of Slapface, a Shudder original. So I hadn't really heard of Slapface, and I think I saw a trailer bounce around once or the name pop up on like upcominghorrormovies.com, but I got to check it out finally. It just came out today on Shudder, and I thought I'd give it a whirl just because, you know, Shudder has a pretty good track record, and I'm actually pretty impressed. It's actually a pretty decent film. So what is Slapface? Slapface is a movie about a young boy who lost his parents and is living with his brother, and he creates a dangerous relationship with a monster that's been rumored to live in the woods. Does that sound familiar? Because I kept thinking the same thing when I was watching it, which is this movie reminds me of Antlers, because even the kid in that story's name was Lucas, and this kind of has some parallels that are very similar, although I definitely don't feel that it's intentional. But, you know, I couldn't help think about this film while I was watching the movie. This kid, of course, becomes closer and closer to this creature that lives in the woods, and his relationships start kind of getting intermingled with it, and things start happening that are pretty bad around him, including his family life, which his brother is taking care of him, and he's pretty young too, and they both have some pretty heavy issues. His brother drinks a hell of a lot and just kind of lets him do whatever the fuck he wants. This movie is directed by Jeremiah Kipp, who made this movie based on a short film that he did with the same name. He's done a myriad of different things, feature films and a lot of short films, all pretty much within the horror genre for the most part, but he's got a lot of stuff that he's actually filmed. So I'm not personally privy to seeing any of his that I know of, but his list is pretty big. So we got a couple of actors who are Disney alumni in here, including Lucas the kid, who is Augustus Maturo, and his older brother Mike Manning. No super familiar faces in here for me personally, but some of you may recognize these two, as well as Dan Hedaya, who's been in a lot of films for many years. I felt like this movie had a pretty good pace to it. Some of the creature effects is a little weird, and I think a lot of people are going to really kind of have the issue with the creature. Now, they don't do a whole lot of showing of the creature or the monster that this kid befriends, and I think that was a good choice personally, because it definitely has like a sort of a creepiness to it, but it's just kind of more like, what the fuck is going on? Like, specifically what I mean about the monster is that, and I'm not going to spoil it for you, but it just, the way it looks might throw some people off because it feels like a different tone of a movie because of that, but the movie is played straight and played very serious throughout the whole movie. That makes sense? As this story sort of unfolds, there is sort of a metaphor attached to this film, and it does kind of end with something that might make some people a little annoyed, but I don't think it was too bad. The movie does a fairly decent job of being a straightforward story while sort of combining all these different elements in it to kind of wrap it up and sort of, well, you already kind of knew what was going on, but maybe have questions by the end kind of movie. But it's pretty decent. There's not a whole lot of gore, but there is blood, and it is kind of violent, and the metaphor in it may hit you stronger than it will somebody else. Or, you know, I found this movie to be pretty interesting to watch, and I wouldn't say it's as good as something like Antlers, but it is actually a pretty decent storytelling, and it does have some decent pacing and some things that are going on in it. It may be hard for some people to get past the sort of monster in this, but I will say this one thing that may kind of settle that. Keep in mind, this is through a child's eyes, so they may perceive things to be differently than something like you or I would see. Overall, this is a pretty decent film to watch. I didn't think it was like amazing, but it is definitely a step, I'm sure, in the right direction for Jeremiah Kipp. If he can come up with stories like this, it will do very well for him. I would be curious to see more films by Jeremiah. So it's not a scary film. It's an interesting story that has a metaphor that does some different things with the characters. Like, before I get to the score, the characters in this movie are very different, being that this kid and his older brother is raising him. And that's just so different, and just how free they are in a way that's not very healthy. Like I said, mimics a little bit of that antlers thing going on if you've seen that movie, but not entirely. It doesn't get to the point where Antlers did for me, and some people found Antlers to be a little bit slow. I thought this was pretty fairly paced, and it is a pretty decent attempt at a horror film. And I would give this probably a 7, maybe a 6.5. But I'll just say 7 out of 10. It's worth watching. It's not going to blow your mind, but you'll definitely see the quality in the film and kind of get the vibe with what's going on in the film. And you'll have to respect it in some degree because it is kind of unique, even if it does remind me of other films. You'll see what I mean when you watch it. So as the story sort of progresses, you start to, lose some of the characters, and you see the sort of dynamics that each of these characters represent in this child's life. And I think it adds to sort of the interest of the film. I didn't feel like I wasn't interested in this movie's ending. I was just like, wow, this is different, and I really don't know where it's going with this. So, and you may have questions at the end. I did a little bit, but I kind of knew what it was. It's kind of on the nose, but in the same regard, it could be anything, and you may have questions. So I don't know. It's kind of up in the air. So moderate on spooks, relatively higher on interest of story. Characters are relatively high. It just isn't great, like super great, like blow you out of the water kind of, but it definitely is worth at least a watch to see what you think for yourself. Some people are scoring it high, some I'll never understand. But yeah, what do you think? Did you watch it on Shudder? Have you seen the trailer yet? Are you planning on watching it? I think it's a fair shot to watch, and if you have the subscription, I mean, why not? Might as well watch it, but I enjoyed it. Let me know what you think in the comment section down below. But other than that, thank you guys so much for coming by, and as always, long live the voyage.